our instructor, Ma'am Jessica Diastilo, and to my classmates, good day. I am Lana Rose E. Dote from BTLED HE2A and welcome to the Principles of Food Preparation. What's the first thing that comes in your mind when you see this? Do you have any idea? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind when I see this is all about the terms, preparation, and techniques in cooking. Am I right? So, do you have any idea what we are going to talk about today? So my assigned topic is divided into 3 parts. First, I am going to talk about the cutting techniques. Second, I'm going to talk about cooking terms. And third, I'm going to talk about food preparation terms. But before moving on to the discussion, here are the objectives of the day. So, at the end of this chapter, the students must have understand the different cooking terms, must have learned the purpose of food preparation methods and when to use each, describe the different techniques of cutting ingredients, and the students must have appreciate the importance of measuring food materials in food preparation. Okay, so as I mentioned, the first thing I'm going to talk about is cutting techniques. There are multiple cutting techniques that allow you to cut food into desired shapes, such as slices, dices, and etc. What proper knife cutting techniques have in common is that they are safe and effective. Cutting techniques can be combined during cutting or used separately. So whether you are a professional chef or a keen home cook, knowing the different types of food cutting style can make or break your dish. From slicing to julienning, here are the 6 different types of cuts that every cook should know. First, we have chop. Chopping is a basic cutting technique that is used to chop ingredients into small pieces. To chop, you must hold the ingredients in the hand and use your other hand to hold the knife. Point the knife at the ingredients and then make a quick slicing motion with the knife while keeping your fingers tackled behind the blade. Second, we have is the dice. Dicing is like chopping, but when you dice, it's imperative and the pieces you cut are uniform in size and shape. The shape should be similar to a dice. That's where the name comes from. With dicing comes a bit of waste when you discard the ends of your food items, but you can reuse those for other dishes like stocks, soups, or purees. So how do you dice? First, you should slice the blocks of veggies or meat into strips, depends on the size of the dice you're looking for. Then, gather the strips together in a bunch and dice at once from one end to the other, creating tasty little cubes. Third we have is the mince. Mincing will turn your food into teeny tiny pieces, smaller than even a fine dice or chop. Your food, veggies or meat, will have an almost paste-like texture. Mincing ingredients like fresh herbs, garlic, or ginger help release their flavors through the oils or liquids in them, and then those flavors distribute evenly in your dish. The mincing procedure is similar to dicing, only the strips you cut have to be much thinner and the dices too. It's a more minutes process, but in general, you don't need it for large quantities of food. Maybe 2 to 3 sprigs of rosemary and 2 to 3 garlic cloves. 4 is the julienne. Julienne is also known as shoestring, but it also means matchsticks. So the technique involves cutting ingredients into long and very thin strips which look like matchsticks. It's commonly used for celery, carrots, onions, and potatoes. Think of the great French fries you get from other potatoes in the thin strips. Yum! You can make it easier on yourself and cut uniformly by removing the edges of your ingredient and the ends to make 4 straight sides. It depends on what you're working with. The standard measurements used are 1/8 by 1/8 by 1 to 2 inches. As you can see, the length can vary depending on your ingredients of choice. This cut usually applies to vegetables, but it also works for meat or fish, especially in the case of stir fries. 5 is slice. Slicing is a basic cutting technique that is used to slice ingredients into thin or thick pieces. So to slice, you must hold the ingredient in one hand and use your other hand to hold the knife. Point the knife at the ingredient and make a slow slicing motion with the knife while keeping your fingers tucked behind the blade. Number 6 is diagonal cut. When diagonal cutting, the knife enters at a 45 degrees angle. This method reduces cooking time because more surface is exposed to the heat, ensuring tenderness and an attractive shape. The left hand or the guiding hand should be relaxed and assume a 45 degrees angle. The cutting motion is smooth, backward draw of a very sharp knife followed by a rule or the wrist to prevent slices from sticking together. Tender, fleshy vegetables or cabbage or cylindrical or vegetables with stalks or celery are sliced diagonally or French cut to avoid a stringy texture. Now that you know the different types of food cutting styles, you can choose the best one for the job at hand. Whether you are chopping, dicing, or slicing an ingredients, you must apply the cutting technique that will not only get the job done but also keep your fingers unharmed. Now, let's move on to our second topic. If you're an enthusiastic home cook, you read the latest food magazines, watch television shows centered on culinary endeavors, and peruse cookbooks for fun, you've likely picked up oodles of basic cooking terms and are nearly conversant in all the techniques. But there may still be some terminology that you're not quite sure about. Is sautéing the same as braising? Can I broil something instead of browning it? And what exactly is a pinch of salt? So, I have gathered lots of cooking terms or methods that you should know. But first, here are the 3 types of cooking methods. First is dry heat. It is cooking methods that involve the circulation of hot or direct contact to fat to transfer heat. So, it works without the preserve of any liquid and also gives food a brown crust on the surface. Second is moist heat cooking method. It relies on the presence of liquid or steam to cook foods. That liquid can be water, it could be broth, wine, or juice. Moist heat cooking methods preserve and even add moisture to the food, unlike dry heat cooking method. Moist heat cooking method will not produce a brown crust, but they are excellent at softening the top fibers in food. And then, lastly, we have the combination method of cooking, which involves both the dry and moist heat cooking. First, let's have the dry heat cooking method. We have here the grilling. It uses heat from underneath to cook the food. So, barbecuing is a common grilling technique. We use charcoal, or you can also use griddle or grill pan on your stovetop to grill a certain food, and flipping is also required to cook foods on both sides. Next, we have is broiling, which is very similar to grilling, but uses oven heat from above instead of below. So you can place your food in the top rack of your oven and then sit it to broil if you have the broil oven. Next is we have the baking. It cooks food by dry heat without direct exposure to a flame, typically in an oven or on a hot surface. And then we have the roasting, which performed inside an oven and uses indirect heat that cooks from all sides for even browning. Baking and roasting both use indirect heat to surround foods and cook food from all sides. The term roasting is used when you want to cook meat or vegetables, while the baking is used when you want to make bread, rolls, and also cakes. So technically, these cooking methods are the same, but baking is usually performed at a lower temperature than roasting. We also have sautéing. It uses a small amount of oil or fat to cook food for even browning. So sautéing means to cook small pieces of food over high heat or medium heat, and it comes from the word sauté. It is a French word which means to jump. Next one, we have Stir frying. It is similar to sauté except that it uses a wok. Wok means a bowl-shaped frying pan kanang dinagko nga kaha bitaw. So okay, stir-fried foods that require less cooking time than salted foods. It involves frying quickly at a very high temperature, which requires the food to be continuously stirred to prevent burning the food. Then, we also have pan frying. It is also similar to sauteing except that more fat is used and working time is longer. While deep frying is the process of quickly browning the surface of food by exposing it to extremely high heat. So it is not considered as a moist heat method because the fat is used instead of water. And we also have the searing. So this is a way to brown your meat or fish quickly. This is the process of quickly browning the surface of food by exposing it to the extremely high heat. Food is moist, often seared a small amount of oil, and then you cook it to the appropriate doneness using another cooking method, whether roasting, grilling, or braising. Let's move on to the moist heat cooking method. So the first one is we have the poaching. It is usually done in a small amount of water around 160 degrees to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. The water is steaming with small bubbles forming on top and against the sides of the pond. So poaching is suitable for delicate food such as eggs, fish, poultry, and fruits. While simmering, it involves bringing a liquid to just below boiling point while being heated to cook food. The temperature for simmering is around 185 degrees to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. So mas taas ang temperature sa simmering kaysa poaching. And after simmering, we have boiling. The temperature for boiling water is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, or when the liquid that you are using for cooking has rapid and aggressive bubbles. While the parboiling, it is a method of partially cooking ingredients like potatoes, carrots, or rice in boiling water until they are particularly cooked. So the difference between parboiling and blanching is that when you blanch, you have to submerge it in a cold water, but parboiling, no need to submerge. Next is blanching. This is the process by which food is placed in rapidly boiling water for a very short time and is then placed in an ice bath to stop the cooking process. Blanching is used to partially cook or to retain and improve the color of the food. And then, we also have steaming, which involves the transfer of heat through vaporized water or other liquids to heat the food, which results in cooking it. And then, last method, which is combination method. So it involves the both dry and moist heat cooking method. So we have braising. It involves simmering large cuts of meat in a small amount of liquid in a covered dish. Liquids used for braising are often wine, stock, or the meat's own juices, while stewing is similar to simmering in that the liquid is heated until it forms gentle, yet quickly moving bubbles. So the difference between stewing and braising is that stewing generally involves a much smaller amount of liquid. And last, let's talk about the food preparation terms. So let's start with the different mixing terms. The first one is stir. To mix a substance in a circular pattern using a spoon, spatula, or other such utensils. So this is the simplest method because it involves mixing all the ingredients together with the use of spoon, spatula, using a circular motion. Next one is blend, to stir ingredients until they are thoroughly combined. So this is the process of combining two or more ingredients to become smooth and uniform. For instance, when you blend your dry ingredients and your liquid ingredients, so the result is a cake batter mixture. Next we have is beat. This is the rigorous mixing of ingredients using spoon, electric whisk, a wooden mixer, or food processor. So the purpose is to thoroughly combine the ingredients and to incorporate air to make it light and fluffy. Next one is cream. It is the process of blending butter and sugar together for the purpose of smoothing the mixture before adding other ingredients. So, as you can see, we have creaming the butter and sugar. Next is fold. It is a technique used to gently combine a light, airy ingredients such as beating egg whites with the heavier ones such as whipped cream or cake mix. Next, we have cut-in. This refers to mixing of fat such as butter or lard. When we say lard, this is a solid fat, with a dry ingredient such as flour until it forms particles of fat that are covered with the dry ingredients. So a pastry blending tool is used for the process. Next we have is whip. It is the process of beating an ingredients vigorously to incorporate air, which makes the ingredients frothy. So in the kitchen, you whip an ingredients to add or incorporate air into it to provide the body or the texture. So basically we use a hand mixer or a large version of whisk. So that's all for today's session. Thank you for watching and listening. May this day bring you delightful learning. Once again, this is Lana Rose E. Dote, your future educator.